Ladies, the day that you have all been so patiently waiting for is finally here. It's Crash Daddy Day. Day 28 of Karen Read's trial started on Friday, and a much anticipated witness finally got to take the stand. Hi, it's a great day for a great day. I'm Sydney Rushing. I'm a criminal defense lawyer in the state of Michigan. Now let's talk about it. The defense called witness number 7, Dr. Daniel Wolf, to the stand, more affectionately known as Crash Daddy. Dr. Wolf is the director of accident reconstruction at ARCA. And yes, it's that ARCA, the one that's been through a million hearings just to be able to get to testify today. Jackson did the direct examination. He started off by getting some background information. And as Jackson was trying to get out that they were not hired by the defense, there was a lot of objections. Then a sidebar was called. And this is all because Brennan didn't like how the questions were being asked. Because of course he doesn't want it to get in that these experts were actually hired by the feds to investigate these officers in this entire case. So they're actually unbiased towards the defense. After the sidebar, Dr. Wolf testified that the ARCA was hired by an outside law enforcement agency to look into this case. He discussed his analysis on Karen's SUV. He said that the broken taillight was consistent with being hit with a cocktail glass, but was inconsistent with hitting John or hitting a pedestrian. He, of course, created a report and has testified at prior hearings. He provided a visual aid to discuss his testimony and to show his findings, and this was in the format of a PowerPoint. In his PowerPoint, he talked about Welcher and Welcher's findings and said that Welcher's findings actually have a lot of important questions that are unanswered. And let me tell you what, the jury is going to be so smart after this case because they got another science lesson in the form of physics. And then there was another sidebar about Wolf testifying whether Welcher used the scientific method or not. After that sidebar, Wolf stated that his testing was to kind of confirm or deny Welcher's hypothesis that, that the SUV hit John's arm. His testing was to either confirm that or deny that. He said that he was testing when a person, comes into contact with the taillight, what those injuries and outcome could be. There was a lot of objections by Brennan based on the format of the question, and that just gets so annoying after a while because this question's going to come in no matter which way he finally asked it in a way that you agree with, but it gets annoying after a while. Wolf said that they used a Lexus and a crash dummy to try and reenact this and to see what injuries would happen when this type of accident occurs. The jury got to see videos of this testing being done with the SUV and the crash dummy to really visualize how this is happening. There was the morning recess. And then after that morning recess, Jackson did what any good defense attorney would do, and he beat the prosecution to the punch about the compensation because we know Brennan was definitely going to harp on that. And with the defense bringing it up first, it really took the wind out of his sails. Wolf said he believed that ARCA was paid approximately $20,000 and that this was not for the initial reporting or the testing. It was compensation for his travel and his time at the prior proceedings. He also said that they're being compensated to testify in this trial. And then we got back to the taillight. Wolf talks about his experiment, and at this time, the jury's seen different videos of, this happening at different speeds with the dummy and the vehicle, essentially comparing the tail lights from those tests to the taillight on Karen's SUV. And at the end of it, their testing showed that at 15 miles an hour, 17 miles an hour, 24 miles an hour, and 29 miles per hour, the damage that the taillights received were inconsistent with what Karen's looked like. Even showed at the 29 mile per hour one, even more damage was done, such as the back window breaking, there was damage to the bumper, and obviously this didn't happen to Karen's SUV. During this testing, they did not see any pieces of taillight cut, puncture, or fray the clothing that the dummy was wearing, like John's hoodie was. Direct examination concluded and the jury went off to lunch. After lunch, Brennan finally got to get his hands on the mic and start questioning this expert, which he knows is very damaging to his case, so he's going to do everything he can to make them look bad. He asked Wolf about his credentials, about his certifications, and he had him confirm that ARCA does work for insurance companies. Wolf said that they originally were doing work for another agency at the beginning of this case and that he knew nothing about the defense or the Commonwealth. And Brennan brought up the issue with deleting the text messages and using the Signal app. And as Wolf said in prior proceedings, is that this is normal routine for him. He doesn't keep these messages about logistics. He just doesn't. And he also said that they use the Signal app because that's what the defense requested, and he had no objection to it. Wolf also said that he gave the defense a list of questions he would like to be asked and kind of how he would be answering those. Brennan's trying to say that this was a script, and he's saying that no, this is more like an outline. And again, as a criminal defense attorney myself, this makes sense to me because he's the expert in this field. I wouldn't know what direct questions to ask about his testing to get where, he's telling us what happened and how it happened. I think it makes perfect sense for him to say, here's the questions and here's the answer. And kind of that's the same of what it would be whether the defense asked the questions or the prosecution. But, Brennan is trying to clearly make it look like Wolf is just here to help the defense. And Wolf said literally that it wouldn't matter who asked the question, defense or Commonwealth, or who called him to testify, his answers aren't going to change. Wolf was asked about his colleague, Dr. Andrew Rentschler's report. Brennan asked basically about using a crash dummy and how this is this an adequate way to test what happens to, the clothing on a person. Wolf stated that Dr. Rentschler is the one who assessed the injuries and told him that they could use this hybrid arm to analyze the injuries to the arm. And then starts asking about the weight of this arm. There was a 2.48 pound difference between John's arm and the crash dummy's arm. The crash dummy's arm was lighter than John's arm, and Brennan's making obviously a big show of this. Asked Wolf to explain how basically the weight of the arm could change the outcome. Wolf essentially said that the lighter arm wouldn't change the impact of the field testing that was done here, and that the damage that could be done between the two different weights would not be significant. Brennan then asked several more questions based on the testing. These had to do with basically being restrained and not restrained, how a car would interact with that, what the mass of the dummy is, what the speed of the vehicle, all these kind of scientific questions. And he's trying to disprove his testing, obviously. Brennan is really trying to get Wolf to say that weight does matter. And Wolf came back and said, yes, it could if it was significant. But again, he's already testified that this was not a significant difference in weight based on the weight difference and the 6,000 pound vehicle. On redirect, Jackson comes back up and he has Wolf testify that, the damage that was on the hoodie of the crash dummy was clearly, his words, clearly road rash. It was not anything that looked like what John's sweatshirt looked like. Wolf confirmed that they were not hired by an insurance company to begin their, investigation into this case. Jackson also had Wolf confirm that he has no knowledge of the weight of John's arm or if anyone actually did weigh his arm, and he has absolutely no idea where Brennan came up with this 11.86 pound number. He has no idea. And court wrap for the day, because a juror has something that they have to do. This is a very accommodating court, I can tell you that much. That wraps up day 28 of Karen Read's trial, and if you can believe it, it also wraps up week 7. And don't worry, ladies, Crash Daddy will be back on Monday for day 29 as his testimony continues. Thank you for being here, and thank you for following along. And if you have been looking forward to this ARCA expert, what are your thoughts so far based on his testimony? Do you think that the jury is going to be taking it well? Or do you think that it's looking like, the defense just paid this guy to say something that benefits them? Let me know in the comments.